Good afternoon and hello, everyone. Welcome to another Flycast Partners webinar. Today, our topic is on BMC's client management. It's a tips and tricks webinar. Yes, folks, we want your questions. You can ask questions about BMC client management throughout our presentation today, and our presenter, none other than Kyle Hamilton, will be happy to answer those for you. Now, Kyle comes to us with about 20 years or so of experience in the IT service management, IT asset management, and IT operations spaces. And he worked directly for BMC software for close to 13 years. So I think he knows a thing or two about this product and some of other products that BMC offers. So take this opportunity to ask him questions about this product today. And before we get started, Kyle, let me introduce Flycast Partners. Flycast Partners offers best-in-class implementation services and training in IT service management, IT asset management, IT operations management, enterprise service management, and workload automation spaces using ITIL best practices. Our professional services team has well over 5,500 professional services engagements, both on-site and remote. Yes, remote. We're doing a lot of that lately in light of the current pandemic situation. And as an organization, we have well over 1,200 regular customers throughout Canada and the United States. I encourage you to reach out to us directly at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278, or visit our website, folks. There's lots of material you can get from our website. You can download white papers or data sheets, check out upcoming events that we have going on, find out about training, inquire about remote administration services. You can check into our L1 support, which we do offer for the BMC client management tool. And you can chat live with our IT experts Monday through Friday during normal business hours. They're there for you. You can email us at info@flycastpartners.com. Without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to our presenter today, Kyle Hamilton, one of our senior SEs here at Flycast Partners. Here you go, Kyle.
All right, thank you, Rich. All right, well, welcome everybody. Appreciate you taking time out of your day, especially around possibly your lunchtime, to listen into today's presentation. As Rich mentioned, if you have questions, please feel free to jump in. As I try to do on, especially with tips and tricks types webinars, trying to address a broad audience as possible. So I'm going to have some maybe high-level tips and tricks that users of BMC's client management might already be aware of. And I'm also going to dive into a few things maybe a little more esoteric and kind of tucked away. So hopefully we can provide a nugget or two that you can take away today, whether you're brand new to BCM and just getting a look at what it can do and what it's capable of, or a longtime user that's looking to eke out every last bit of functionality. So to that point, at a high level, for those that don't have a lot of familiarity with BMC's client management, this is an overarching desktop endpoint management tool that's designed to cover your Windows, Linux, and Mac OS devices, as well as iOS devices if you're looking to manage mobile tablets and phones. And not all the administration or management of those devices really starts with getting and collecting a good inventory. Now, BMC's client management does this in two ways. The first is what's referred to as simply asset discovery. And this is really, upon installation, really one of the very first things that's done. You may connect into AD, Active Directory. We'll talk about that in a moment first. But if it's not first, this is typically going to be the second task that you're going to undergo. And this is so that you have a full understanding of everything that's out there in your estate to be managed. Because a lot of times, things out there you might not be aware of. So this is designed to be that kind of safety net or catch-all as people walk in and plug into network ports or attached to wireless. you want to at least know that those devices are out there so you can make a decision as to whether that's a device that needs to be managed and secured, or whether it's simply enough to know that it's out there. So this is something you typically set up on a routine schedule. And I mentioned this simply because I recently talked with a customer that was coming back to us in need of a tool that could help discover their switches and their routers and the network devices, everything except your desktops and laptops and servers. And when they had initially deployed client management, they immediately dug in and started pushing out the management agents to all the endpoints, and really never stopped to do the asset discovery. So the silver lining at the end of that story is just by pointing out the fact that this existed, which was going to give them the network devices, the switches, the routers, the printers, the IP phones. So without any added purchase, they were able to expand their use of the tool. But it reminded me that, and I often do this as well, I have a tendency to bypass the instruction manuals and forget the admin guides, and I just start, pulling levers and pushing buttons till I get it to work. But that oftentimes can leave you out of, again, some of those not just nice to have features, but maybe critical features that you can take advantage of. So this is something, once you run this and point this at your network, its design is to provide you with that master list. Here's everything that's connected that you have to deal with. Now, for a lot of customers, you could just set it up to automatically deploy the agents to those devices as they're discovered. In some cases, customers prefer to have access or have a view at this list, in which case they may go through and manually select devices, and they're going to push an agent out to those machines, just based on whether they deem it something that they need to control. Now, within that agent, it's going to then start collecting its own inventory on its own schedule. So no need, for all those devices that you have agents deployed to, they will, the minute you push that agent out to them, they will disappear from this list forever until you either uninstall that agent or you delete the record and have it recreated through another network scan. So anything in here means no agents installed. And of course, for your switches and routers and things like that, the key to collecting this here is oftentimes after it's collected here, you want to populate this into some asset database. It may be a part of your service desk, CMDB, service management tool set. It may be somebody in finance that's tracking cost and depreciation and the financial side. They want to know what's out there. So even though we can't manage that Cisco switch, being able to collect the information on it, know where it is, and that it's out there, and then be able to push this data into those external databases so that you can manage the life cycle of the device can be critical. For those that have the agent already on them, they become a part of this topology view that you see here. So these are the devices I have out there. Agents already been pushed out, and we've got management capability. Now there's some color coding in here to show you, what's actually online and offline via the red and the green. Probably not going to be able to drill in close enough to see it, but the little black squares up in the top also indicate the OS. So you got your Windows, you got your Penguin, excuse me, and you got your Apple for the different types. So you've got some graphical indicators. Number one, is it online? Can we communicate with it? Number two, what's it running? And then through this is where you can access your context menu. I call this the activity action menu for that device. This gives me a list of all of the capabilities, all the things that I can, open up, execute, do in regards to this machine. The inventory details from the agent are going to be more in depth than what you're going to get through that agentless scan. Now you can still pick up hardware and software configurations like you see here, know what's installed, and know things like processor and OS and hard drive configurations, monitors, video drivers, things like that. But what you can't get is the ability to retrieve, talk about software licensing, get into software license management, as well as the ability to track software usage. So not just knowing that piece of software is installed on the device, but has that piece of software been used recently and how often, so that you can start to use information like that to manage the licensing, reclaim, and then use client management to deploy it out to another machine that needs it. Now, in that same menu, I've also got that over here on the left-hand side, so you can access it either way. That same menu also gives me access to be able to launch remote control sessions. So I can select a device in that topology and just jump in and out of user screens. Now, this is often a frequent question in regards to usually anytime I show this is it possible to set it up so that the user has to acknowledge the remote control before just simply see their screen and things like that. So, and this is one of those things that not many customers dug into, but as part of your administrators, your different users, and let's just pick on Tom here. Tom has a security profile that allows me to define, number one, what can he do? When he logs into this console, can he, view that remote control option? Can he look at that hardware software inventory? Can he roll out, agents to those machines if necessary? So you define, what kind of capabilities he has first, and then secondarily, what objects within client management does he have those capabilities on? So I have the ability, we talk about capabilities back here, to look at inventory or deploy software packages. Well, I might want to limit him to only being able to deploy Microsoft SQL Server, or maybe he just deploys operating systems. So by assigning objects to those capabilities, I can also control the scope of those capabilities. You define what Tom can do, and then what can he do it on. Now, this is more or less kind of hard-coded, right? You're picking out saying he can, view and update these reports, and he can view and update queries and things like that. But the dynamic objects is much more effective and much less time consuming in that you can leverage your queries to automatically assign devices. So you can see right here at the top is an example. Tom has the ability to manage 64-bit Windows machines, which means that any device that's been collected in inventory through that discovery process that shows up as 64-bit, Tom automatically gets administrative access to those boxes. If one pops up on the network tomorrow, or 10 pop up, and they're 64-bit running Windows OS, which they more than likely all are today, then again, Tom's automatically got admin rights to be able to view and manage that device without having to come in every day and add 10 new devices to Tom's list of objects that he can manage. So by taking advantage of the queries, which more than likely you're going to be using these queries in many other places when it comes to pushing software, and you want to push software at all your 64-bit Windows devices, or you want to assign some kind of a power policy, and push a power management policy, out to a group of machines. Being able to say, do this to all my 64-bit Windows devices, or push this out to my Acer machines. So So being able to leverage, powerful queries, not only to give you the flexibility and granularity to, manage your administrative rights, but also to make them, very dynamic. So the more you manage through the queries, again, all it takes is making sure that you're, you're running that inventory on a regular basis, so that if it falls into one of those categories, you're automatically giving permissions and giving rights to those devices, even if they're brand new, just by virtue of the fact that they meet the given criteria. Now, part of that, as I finally get back to my original point, is that, and let's take app administrators here. Part of that I mentioned before is, and let's just let's add results. So here's where I'm gonna dig in, and I'm gonna grab that 64-bit Windows, because here's where, coming full circle, I can get back to being able to define, does that user have to acknowledge that remote control session or not? And again, by doing it this way, I can say, yes, allow the remote control access, or, the pop-ups, not required, or maybe only in certain cases. If the user's logged out, if the session's closed, nobody's logged on, no need to acknowledge. But if they are logged on, we want the pop-up to show up so that they can say yes or no. By setting this up, again, in this way, now I'm automatically setting that pop-up for acknowledgement on all of my 64-bit Windows devices. So again, I can, another place where I can use that same query again to assign, permissions and capabilities for the administrators logging in. And in this case, actually defining which of the endpoints that I manage am I requiring user acknowledgement on, versus, again, having to go through and identify those one at a time, or have to create some manual list. So that certainly is configurable, as to whether somebody has to say yes or no before they simply jump in. Now, going back to remote control, beyond the basic or the standard, I'll call it remote control, you also have what's called direct access tools. This will allow you to do things without having to pass all the screen refresh data back and forth. You need to stop and start services. You want to modify the registry, flip a bit, add a key. You come in and do that directly here, just by really just opening up the registry hive in this UI, and saving a lot of bandwidth. If you're not trying to follow along with the user, or you're not doing something you need to navigate and see what's, because you're not real sure maybe where you're going, you can easily use the direct access tools to take care of a vast majority of issues remotely, without having to eat all the bandwidth up. Now, as of the latest version, which is 12.9 of client management, they've also added another long requested feature, which is the ability to remote control on demand, on request. That way, if you are needing to open a remote session with a device that you don't have the client, you haven't had an opportunity, or if it's brand new, maybe it's somebody's personal device at home, an employee that's working remotely, maybe using a home PC or a home laptop to do their work, but needs some help. This is a way that you can simply generate a one-time URL that you can then, you've got options to email it or copy to your clipboard. You can, Skype it to them, or, instant message, text it, wherever, get them via content, so that once they receive the email and that message, they can click on that URL that's seen, and it will give them a code. They'll read back to to you as the person sending that email out, and that will allow you, it's essentially this code right here, and that will allow you to immediately open up a remote session to that endpoint without having to install the client management agent and without having to install anything, but still giving you remote control capability, both for both for Windows as well as Mac OS. Now, back on the home page of this console, it also gives me some frontline access to be able to get into the discovery and inventory information, as well as giving me remote control capabilities through the agent, right? Because this is one of in this case my actual master server. So this is where through these tabs I can dig in and look to see everything from IP and MAC address information all the way to what type of modules are we actually loading into that agent on that machine, and of course all the inventories we've collected, the hardware and software inventories, patch inventories, so that this provides you with a web-based console that is scaled down in nature, so they're not going in there and setting up inventory discovery schedules on the network, and they're not deploying applications across the enterprise and things like that. But they may have need to support customers or end users. So this way you've got a scaled down interface that limits them to simply remote control to that device, and having access to that discovery information without having to worry about locking them down out of all those other areas in that primary admin console. While I'm inside this particular remote session, another feature that some customers are not often aware of is there is the capability through the agent on the endpoint to be able to allow users to open up a My Apps kiosk. It's an endpoint kiosk that gives you the ability to advertise or publish content, whether it's a desktop application. It could be what's called an operational rule, which is client management's way of allowing you to execute commands on a remote device, push a set of commands to a remote device without having to write bash or PowerShell scripts all day long. So I may have those operational rules created for simple things, right? Just make it easy for the users so they don't have to navigate them through the help or start menus. But being able to then customize and display this depending upon the user, right? As they log on, the My Apps portal may be very different from one person to the next. But this gives you the ability to, instead of having to push software out to the entire enterprise, maybe not really knowing who's going to use it and who won't, you simply create that software package and throw it in the My Apps console. They can double click on the desktop shortcut or the little agent in the sys tray, and if they need it or want it, they click on install or run or open. You'll see it's in the process of downloading Chrome now. They can kick off a defrag of their drive or clear their temp folders, whatever's needed. This just gives you a nice, easy way. I don't know why it take a couple hours. A nice, easy way to get quick fixes and some quick wins, and makes it easy for the end user because they don't have to authenticate. They don't have to remember any kind of ID or password. All they have to do is, most users will create a desktop shortcut. I usually, just to keep things out of the way, just right click on my agent and they can pop it open right from there and get to what they need. Now let's jump out of this console and go back here. Something else I've mentioned in regards to the architecture and the agents that you deploy to manage these devices. So the agent that gives me remote control and gives me the ability to pull up that inventory information. You can when you configure that agent, there is an option within it to make it what's called a relay. In most moderate size environments, you typically don't want to be doing everything here at the master server and trying to push everything out. So I don't want to be sitting on that server and creating all my software packages and operating system images, and I'm collecting all my inventory and pushing patches out across a wide area network, and especially if you got more than a handful of users at different remote sites. Rather than pushing those things across the WAN, you want to set up a relay point like this app Servo2 up here or tech support box. And what those relays serve is to, number one, be a collection point. So if I'm collecting inventory in Miami, for example, I want this relay point to ask those it's like 7 machines for their inventory. I want that tech support box to just simply store that information locally until whatever time I schedule to come around and pick it up or have it send it. And then have it do the same for other regional offices or other buildings within a campus even. So that things are happening local to the user, as close to the user as possible, serving as a collection point and then a distribution point. So rather than pushing a Microsoft Office from this master server 7 times across the wire out to these 7 boxes, I want to create it here, but then I want to store it here and then have it deploy to those 7 machines and then simply report back all's well, delete the files and go on. That way you can use those relay points to distribute the architecture as needed, and again offload as much WAN traffic to LAN traffic as possible. It doesn't have to be a server. It doesn't require that you deploy any additional infrastructure. And that's why I mentioned in reference to the agent, it's simply a checkbox. So in most cases, you'll have at least 2 agents that you're going to create within client management. One's going to be, I guess, your agent for almost everybody, and then you're going to have an agent that's going to have that relay checkbox checked. And you're only going to put that agent on those ones that are going to be those collection points and the distribution points. With only really one requirement on that, and that's only as it relates to OS deployment. So client management allow you can take an existing library of OS images you have today, and we can use client management to simply maintain that library and use it to deploy those operating system images out. Or we can actually help you, create those images and start to maintain the library inside of BMC Client Management. Now, when you start talking about OS deployment, a lot of times that's done via Pixie boot. You might have seen this before. You boot a device up to Pixie boot, and it's going to come up to a menu. It's going to tell you, here's all the, you can boot to the local drive, or you may be able to boot to some other secondary drive, or here's different OS images that are also in the library. You use your up down arrow key and enter, and it's going to start essentially pulling that image down from the server. In the case of these Pixie boots, just thing to note, you're going to have one of those relays on every single subnet on your network, because that Pixie boot cannot cross the subnet, so it can't go through that router. And so that relay point that you put out there on that subnet, it by default will serve not as a collection point and distribution point, but it serves as the Pixie listener. So for any of the 254 devices on that subnet, when they boot up to that Pixie menu or try to, you've got that relay agent that's out there saying, come talk to me. I can connect you to the OS library. So that's the only, I mentioned that again, just because that's something seldom talked about, but is an important thing to note if you're looking to, get into OS deployment, because it's certainly something you want to factor in when you're kind of defining what your topology needs to, or you want it to look like. Just understanding that if you're doing OS deployments and you've got 50 subnets, you're going to need 50 relays out there. You just want to make sure that you select the right 50 devices to serve, something that's going to be on the network, has some spare processor cycles, for collecting the inventory, and then some hard drive space, enough to store the patches or the, Microsoft Office packages and things that it might be deploying. Other than that, there's no other requirements as to what constitutes a relay. So it's very easy to create them if you need them. We've had some clients that have gone as far as actually just deploying and making every single device on the network a relay. It's a little overkill, but it can be done. Now, another thing to note in my topology view here, I think, and this goes into a little more esoteric, you have the ability to create custom menus in here. This is not a set list of actions that can be taken. Everything that you create, which, by the way, point up here, is going to be under system variables. I have a section or tab within there called device menu. And so I can go in and I can create, a new entry into that context menu. And it can be an executable, HTTP, send a web page or open up a web page on the device, send them to some site, or, open up a command line. So I can just start, digging around, nosing around or executing things on my own. So you can actually go through and build, custom menus. Could be, you want to ping the device, or you want to do a trace route, maybe troubleshooting type activities, or it could be something for informational purposes. I mean, customers have used these to link to, the Dell guides and product manuals and things like that, specific to that model device, because you can actually even feed parameters in there, like the operating system version and things like that. So you have a lot of flexibility to be able to, whatever you build in that device menu tab under that system variable section will allow you to execute, remote commands on that endpoint. So I can, open up that website or that page here. I can push that page to the device so that it opens up on their end. I can ping them, or I can force them to open up a command line and ping me. So that gives you a lot of flexibility to build, and not only some nice troubleshooting tools, if you go through kind of a standard set of troubleshooting steps, but also just points of reference, manuals, documentations, helpful sites, things like that. In addition to being able to customize the menus, you can also customize the data that you actually want to track about a particular device. And this is something that you have to kind of look for. So not many users know that it's here, but in this additional device attributes section, you can actually go in and create additional fields that you want to track about a given device that's discovered. For me to see that, when I right click on it, in my topology or over here, and I pull up this properties page, You'll see there's different sections here. You can kind of expand and collapse, and right at the bottom is customized information. So anything I've added into that additional device attributes tab will allow me, now I can go in and, store my warranty, and assign a, date to the record and things like that. Have a replacement warranty. Who do we contact in case of problems? So any kind of, additional information, typically things you're not going to be, those things aren't discoverable. You're not going to collect that with that agent or the network scan. Those are things you're either going to, be importing via spreadsheet perhaps, or inputting via the fields. But that way you can append, whatever additional information you find is important and that you want to track. Now, along those same lines, part of your inventory. So at the same time you get your hardware, software inventory, you get your patch inventory. And this is where I could come in and see, what's missing, what's installed, both patches and service packs. And you can go through here just like you did to deploy the agents out, and you can select individual patches, sections and groups. And if I want to fix those patches, I can simply say fix, put it on a schedule, tell it whether to reboot the machine or not, set a few variables or options that I want to pick, and immediately push those 3 patches out to this one device. So you're collecting inventory across the board. In addition to what it collects, you also have this financial details section where everything from invoice and PO information to cost and depreciation. So it allows you to set a useful life, for each type of device, desktops, laptops, servers, so that when you go in and discover a new instance, all you have to do is put in the cost, and it'll depreciate that asset over time, ultimately until, like in my case with this one, it's fully depreciated because it's been in service for going on almost 10 years. So that way you can automatically, have financial management in addition to, hardware, software inventory. The security details help you manage the full life cycle, which and can be set up, through that. You can define, what those life cycle stages or statuses are. So that it's initially set up when that device is discovered on the network, and you deploy that agent, then it automatically sets the status of that asset, to deployed, and then being able to manage it all the way through, retirement, and then everything that happens in between. Now, let's see, we got about 5 minutes here. Sorry. In addition to being able to patch those devices, like I mentioned earlier, one by one, most often with client management, you want to do things using an automated job. Now, for almost everything in client management, there's a simple wizard to help you do it. Once you get accustomed to it, you'll start to take shortcuts, kind of like I do often on, jump in and out of menu items. But if you're just starting off or you're trying to familiarize yourself with the landscape, all you have to do is stick to this little pane right over here on the lower right-hand corner, and it'll navigate you to whatever you need and get you. It brings all of these individual pages, because you can see this navigator menu is quite deep. There's a lot of options, a lot of things to click on, a lot of places to get lost. You stick to the wizards. So if you wanted to create that, automated patch job, you just double click on the wizard. That's going to walk me through kind of page by page. The nice thing about the wizards is well, there's two really nice things. Number one, and this is something some people haven't noticed even after years of use, is that by default, when you open up all these pages, anywhere you're inputting information or viewing anything, by default, you'll have this little red X or little X up in the top corner. If you click on that until you get the check mark, then when you start to mouse over each of the fields, it's going to not only explain in many cases what you're actually selecting, what that actually means, what it actually does, but in a large number of cases, actually giving you written examples. Here's an example of one way, use this, or one way that this is done. So there's a lot of helpful information just by turning on those instant expert tips, is what they call them. And again, for some reason they default them to off. But between things like that and the wizards, it makes this a tool that you can very easily get up to speed real quickly. Because the relays are easy to configure, you don't have to deploy a lot of infrastructure. It's really getting the agents onto the endpoints. So there's very little to have to deal with and set up. And then if I want to then start pushing patches out, using those relays, then I can come through and create an automated job. I just pick the type and severity of the patches I want to manage, the list of applications I want to manage. And this is you've got a long list of third-party apps in here through the patch engine that can allow you to automate, far beyond, the Microsoft realm. Other offenders like Java and, your browsers and things like that. We don't have to deal with Flash really anymore. But, Google, things like that. As well as all of the, the Windows world and things like that, the kind of tried and true, Microsoft Office and all the way to Yahoo Messenger. So you can simply go through and identify, the tools and the operating systems that you wish to manage. And then once you've selected all the, let's grab these guys. Let's grab admin server. Once I grab my applications, I can quickly then run through and define the schedule, daily, weekly, monthly. I mean, every Sunday and second Sunday and Friday of the month, I can put a window within there. So only start it at 5 p.m. or early in the morning. And then I can either have it, maybe I have it stop. So if it's not finished by 12, then stop whatever you're doing and we'll pick it up again tomorrow at 8, or let it run until it's finished. So this way I can quickly run through, define what patches I want to push out, when do I want them to go out, and this comes back here to those queries once again that we talked about, where I can now go in and say I want to push these patches out to maybe all my Windows devices. Or maybe I want to get into specific, operating systems. Or another example would be query on type, which customers use quite frequently. I want to push it out to all my desktops. And being able to, call a group like that out using that same query. So again, there may be 50 machines in that desktop group today. There may be 400 in there, 6 months from now. Every time this patch job runs, it's going to run that query, and however many devices meet the criteria, and you see these are all those that are part of that desktop group as of today. But again, if somebody comes in tomorrow and plugs one in, it's automatically going to get added to this list because it's going to be classified as a desktop machine by the operating system. So a lot, I guess. Ultimately, the message there is for those that haven't already done so, or maybe haven't spent a lot of time with the device groups, which you can create from those queries. This is something, if you spend a little bit of time in here, building some of those groupings like that by department, by type, by operating system, whatever the case may be, then you'll find that you get a lot more flexibility, and you can do things a lot faster when it comes time to setting up inventory schedules, or you want to manage software licensing, because you can quickly go in and say, hey, I want to manage software licensing on all my Dell devices. I want to track SQL Server usage on, all of my IBM, servers. Whether you build them in here or last point I'll make is one I first mentioned. I said I would come back to, which is, and something some customers don't think about or do, is you have the option or ability to connect this directly to Active Directory. Big benefit to you there is, number one, I can choose, what information do I want to pull. I can pull all my users in, all my user accounts, and I can pull all my computers in. This is beneficial in that if I pull the computer in from AD, I can immediately start deploying agents out to those devices before I've even done a single network scan with client management. So it'll allow you to get the jump on, having to do that network scan. Not that it takes terribly long to begin with. Typically, that's done in maybe a couple hours tops. But this will allow you to immediately connect to AD, pull, and not only pull all the devices and users in, but to pull in the groups, the OUs, and containers. So now these become groups that I can now target with patches or deploy applications to, that are being managed by Active Directory. So again, somebody may get thrown into the marketing OU tomorrow, and there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 devices in there. That way, again, I've got a dynamically updating group within client management that I can use to report on, assign permissions around, set remote control capabilities on. It just gives you a lot of flexibility. I know we're at our time, and I want to be respectful. So I want to thank everybody. And Rich, I guess I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, audience, surprising, no questions today. I've been watching and waiting, but I think Kyle did a great job in showing some of the most important features of BMC Client Management. If you have any questions that you can think about later on, by all means, give us a call at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. I also encourage you to chat with us live on the little chat feature that we have on our website. We are happy to talk to you Monday through Friday during normal business hours. If you need data sheets, white papers, demos, whatever it is that you're looking for, they will be able to help you. And even if you just want to go and chat about future projects or whatever that is, by all means, go on our website, take a look at the chat. In the bottom right-hand corner is a little green box, or you can email us at info@flycastpartners.com. With that being said, Kyle, thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it.
Folks, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. And until our next presentation, I want to remind everybody we have ITIL Simulations webinar taking place on Tuesday. It is definitely something you want to sign up for and attend. So ITIL Simulations on this upcoming Tuesday. Sign up for that. It's on our website. And enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe out there, folks. Just had somebody ask about recording. Yes, we will have a recording available by the beginning of next week for this presentation. Go ahead and reach out to us, and we'll make sure that we get that over to you. All right. And with that being said, folks, enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you on our next event.